All right, so have you ever wondered, like, why do so many women seem to have this, like, preference for taller partners?
Yeah.
We got a ton of, like, articles and studies about this,
Yeah.
and
It's a really fascinating
it
topic.
gets super interesting.
Yeah. And in this deep dive, what we're really going to uncover is
Yeah.
it's not just like a simple preference, right? It's like this mix of evolutionary biology,
Yeah.
societal norms, and even like safety concerns.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. So let's, like, rewind way back to, like, caveman times.
Right.
Like, our sources are suggesting that height was, like, a major advantage back then.
Absolutely. Think about it, like taller men,
Yeah.
they're probably better hunters, right?
Yeah.
Better protectors.
Makes sense.
And Dr. Fisher, she's an anthropologist, and she's featured in one of these studies.
Okay.
And she puts it this way. She says, in ancestral environments, a taller man could like provide better protection and resources for his family.
Right.
So that made him a more desirable mate. It's almost like those instincts are still with us, you know,
Oh, yeah, totally.
even if we don't realize it.
Yeah. It's almost like that scene in Jurassic Park where the T-Rex is chasing the Jeep.
Right.
And you're like, man, I wish I was like a couple inches taller right now.
Exactly.
But it's not all about dodging dinosaurs, is it? I mean, like, media and pop culture, they seem to play a huge role too.
100%.
Yeah.
Like there's this constant bombardment
Right.
of images and stories that reinforce that idea that
Yeah.
taller men are more attractive,
Yeah.
more successful.
Right. Like, how often do you see the shorter guy
Yeah,
get the girl in a romantic comedy?
not very often.
Not very often.
Right.
It's always like,
It's the tall, handsome lead.
yeah, he sweeps her off her feet.
Right.
And even in advertising, it's like always the taller guys
Yes.
who are presented as like,
The epitome of masculinity,
yeah,
success,
Yeah.
attractiveness.
totally. And these portrayals, I feel like they create this
Yes.
like self-perpetuating cycle
It's a cycle.
where height becomes associated with like desirability.
Yes.
And those perceptions just get passed down
Passed down through generations.
through generations.
And it's subtle,
Right.
but it's so powerful, you know,
Yeah.
in shaping our subconscious ideas
Wow.
about attractiveness.
And then there's the whole like personal safety aspect, which
Right.
like really stood out to me in some of these sources.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me that like
Yeah.
in cultures with higher rates of violence against women,
Yeah,
that a taller partner might feel more reassuring.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a complex issue.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that all women prioritize height for this reason,
Right.
but it's definitely a factor that we can't ignore.
Sure.
And it ties back to that like primal instinct of
Right.
feeling safe, protected.
Okay. And let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Like physical attraction plays a role too,
Sure.
right?
Of course.
Height is definitely a noticeable feature.
It's kind of hard to miss.
Right.
I remember reading in one of the articles that height is often linked to these perceptions of confidence
Yes.
and dominance,
Totally.
which can be attractive qualities.
They can be.
Yeah,
It's all connected.
it really is.
But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Like, when you think about the people you find attractive,
Yeah,
what role does height play for you?
that's a great question. I think for me, it's less about a specific height
Right.
and more about like the overall presence someone has.
Right.
But I can definitely see how height can play into those like
Yeah,
initial perceptions of attractiveness.
for sure. It's definitely something to think about.
It is.
But while we're on the topic of perceptions,
Yeah.
we can't overlook the impact
Right.
that these preferences can have on shorter men.
Yeah.
Several of the articles you shared included like personal accounts
Yeah.
from men who felt overlooked
Right.
or rejected because of their height.
Yep.
Yeah. One story that really stuck with me
Yeah.
was about David.
Okay.
He was an entrepreneur,
Right.
and he faced constant rejection in the dating world
Oh, wow.
because of his height.
It's heartbreaking, you know, because these experiences can really chip away at someone's self-esteem,
Right,
leading to insecurity and even social anxiety.
Yeah.
Dr. Kevin Thompson, who's a psychologist that specializes in body image,
Okay.
he talks about this in one of the studies. He says height-based rejection
Yeah.
can have a profound impact on self-worth,
Wow.
particularly for men who are already sensitive about their stature.
That's really powerful.
It is.
But the good news is,
Yeah.
David's story has a happy ending.
Oh, good.
He eventually found a partner who valued his personality and intelligence
It's great.
over his height.
Exactly. It's a reminder that while societal preferences exist,
Right.
individual connections can transcend them.
Yeah.
And it's not about forcing anyone to change their preferences.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that attraction is multifaceted
Right.
and that real compatibility goes way beyond physical attributes.
Totally. I'm sure we've all met those charming, charismatic people
Right.
who just light up a room
Yeah,
and their height becomes totally irrelevant.
totally.
So how do we reconcile these conflicting factors?
Hmm.
Like we've got evolutionary biology
Yeah.
pulling us in one direction,
Right.
societal conditioning in another,
Yeah.
and then the very real impact on individuals to consider.
That's where the insights from experts like Dr. Fisher and Dr. Thompson become really valuable.
Yeah, let's unpack those a bit more in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Because it seems like they have some key advice on navigating these complex preferences
Right.
and promoting a more balanced perspective on attraction.
For sure.
Welcome back to our deep dive on height preferences.
Yeah.
We've just scratched the surface of this topic,
Great.
exploring the evolutionary and societal influences that shape these preferences.
For sure.
But now let's get into some of the more
Yeah.
nuanced, even controversial aspects.
It's interesting, because sometimes
Yeah.
these height preferences can be like a stand-in
Yeah.
for other qualities.
Right.
You see this idea pop up in some of the articles,
Sure.
Like some people might equate height
Yeah.
with things like confidence or social status.
Oh, totally. It's like that saying, he's tall, dark, and handsome.
Right.
The implication being that he must also be
Yeah.
successful. And has it all figured out.
Exactly. It becomes this shortcut
Yeah.
for judging someone,
Right.
even if subconsciously.
Yeah.
But as one of the articles pointed out,
Yeah.
that's a pretty slippery slope.
It is.
Just because someone is tall
Right.
doesn't automatically mean they possess those other qualities. It's
Yeah.
like assuming someone with a fancy car is
Yeah.
a good driver.
Right.
There's just no correlation.
It's funny you mention that
Yeah.
because I was reading a piece by Dr. Thompson,
Yeah.
psychologist we mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
and he brought up a really interesting point.
Okay.
He said, when we focus on height
Yeah.
as a primary marker
Yeah.
of attractiveness,
You're right.
we risk overlooking a whole range
Yes.
of other qualities that are way more important
Right.
for long-term compatibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about it like kindness,
Right.
intelligence,
Yeah.
a sense of humor.
Right.
Those are the things that truly make a person special,
Yeah.
not their height.
For sure.
And it's not just about romantic relationships either.
Okay.
This whole height bias can seep into
Oh, yeah.
friendships,
Totally.
even professional settings.
That's a good point. One of the articles actually mentioned a study that found that shorter men often face discrimination in the workplace.
Wow.
They're less likely to be promoted
Really?
and even earn less on average
Wow.
than their taller counterparts.
It's almost like this self-fulfilling prophecy
Yeah.
where society tells them they're less valuable,
Right.
and then those expectations become internalized,
Right.
affecting their confidence, their
Yeah.
opportunities.
It's a disturbing trend,
It is.
and it really highlights how deeply ingrained these biases can be.
Absolutely.
And then there's online dating,
Right?
which, as several of the sources pointed out,
Yeah.
can really exacerbate these issues.
Oh, for sure.
Think about it, a lot of dating apps.
Yeah.
They allow you to filter potential matches
Right?
by height.
By height.
It's like putting up this virtual barrier
Yeah.
that says anyone below this line need not apply.
And what's fascinating is that,
Yeah.
as Dr. Fisher pointed out in her research,
Okay.
these online platforms,
Yeah.
while intended to broaden our dating pool,
Right.
they can inadvertently reinforce our existing biases,
Oh, wow.
leading to a sort of digital echo chamber
Right.
where we're only exposed to a narrow range of
Yeah.
potential partners.
It's like those algorithms are feeding us
Right.
what they think we want to see
Exactly.
rather than challenging us to consider
Yeah.
a wider range of possibilities. So where do we go from here?
Right.
How do we break out of these cycles
Yeah.
and promote a more balanced perspective on attraction,
Yeah.
both online and offline?
Well, it's not about telling people who they should or shouldn't find attractive.
Right.
That's incredibly personal.
Yeah.
It's more about encouraging awareness
Okay.
and critical thinking.
Right.
It's about recognizing that these height preferences,
Yeah.
while often presented as natural and innate,
Right.
are actually shaped
Right.
by this complex interplay
Yeah.
of biological and cultural factors.
No, in a way, it's about unpacking those factors
Yeah,
and understanding how they influence our perceptions.
absolutely.
And maybe, just maybe,
Yeah,
challenging some of those ingrained biases along the way.
exactly. And it's not just about individual reflection either. It's about changing the narrative
Right.
on a larger scale.
So how do we actually do that?
Right.
What are some tangible steps we can take
Yeah.
to promote a more inclusive and accepting approach to attraction?
I mean, some of these sources offered some really interesting solutions.
Okay.
Things like promoting diversity in media representation
Yeah.
and encouraging open conversations
Right.
about these sensitive topics.
Those are fantastic starting points.
Yeah.
And what's so exciting is that
Yeah.
there are people and organizations already working on these issues.
There are.
For example, one of the articles highlighted a campaign
Okay.
called Love Beyond Labels
Oh, cool.
that's specifically aimed at challenging societal norms
Right.
and celebrating diversity in all its forms.
That's amazing.
And it sounds like it's not just about romantic relationships either.
No.
It's about fostering acceptance and appreciation for everyone,
Right.
regardless of their height or any other physical attribute.
You got it. It's about creating a world where people feel valued
Right.
for their character, their intelligence, their kindness,
Yeah.
and their contributions,
Mhm.
not just for how they measure up
Yeah.
on a height chart.
And that's a future worth striving for,
It is.
don't you think?
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. But before we get too ahead of ourselves,
Right.
let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and focus on what we can do on a more personal level
Okay.
to address these issues.
Yeah.
The articles also offered some great advice
Yeah.
on how to combat height-related insecurities
Right.
and cultivate a more positive self-image.
Absolutely. And that's where things like self-acceptance and personal growth come in.
Right.
It's about recognizing your own worth
Yeah.
and focusing on your strengths
Right.
rather than getting hung up on societal expectations.
It's about understanding that true confidence comes from within,
Yes.
and it's not dependent on
Right.
external validation
Right.
or meeting arbitrary standards
Yeah.
set by others.
Exactly. And it's about surrounding yourself with people
Yeah.
who appreciate you for who you are and all.
I love that.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
let's transition to the final segment,
Okay.
where we'll explore those practical tips for building confidence
Right.
and fostering a more balanced perspective on attraction.
Yeah.
We'll also delve into the expert advice
Okay.
from Dr. Fisher and Dr. Thompson,
Right.
who offer some really insightful strategies
Yeah.
for navigating these complex dynamics.
They do.
Welcome back to our deep dive. You know, we've really unpacked a lot, haven't we?
We have.
From evolutionary roots to societal pressures, even the impact on individuals.
Right.
I mean, it's clear this topic is way more complex than it might seem
It really is.
at first glance.
Absolutely. And I think, like, one of the biggest takeaways for me
Yeah.
is that there's no single right answer
Right.
or perspective on this. Like, what we've really explored here
Yeah.
are the many layers of influence. Right.
That shape our perceptions
Right.
of
Yeah.
attractiveness.
Yeah.
And height is just one piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, it's like we've been peeling back an onion.
Right.
With each layer, we just uncover
More and more.
more nuance,
Yeah.
more complexity.
Complexity.
But beyond just understanding these factors,
Right.
what I'm really curious about is
Yeah.
how can we apply this knowledge
Yeah.
to create more positive change,
Yeah.
both personally and on a societal level?
That's a great question. And luckily,
Yeah,
the sources you shared
yeah.
offered some fantastic insights
Yeah.
and practical advice on this very topic.
Okay, awesome.
So let's start with the personal side of things.
Okay.
For those who might be struggling with like height-related insecurities,
Yeah.
Dr. Thompson, the psychologist, emphasizes the importance of self-acceptance.
Okay.
He says when we learn to appreciate ourselves for who we are,
Yeah.
flaws and all,
Right.
we become less dependent on external validation,
Right.
including things like height. It's like that old saying, you can't love anyone else until you love yourself.
Right.
It's about recognizing your own worth
Yes.
and not letting societal standards dictate your self-esteem.
Exactly. And it's not about denying that these preferences exist
Right.
or pretending they don't have an impact.
Right.
It's about taking control of your own narrative
Yeah.
and focusing on what you can control,
Right.
which is your own personal growth and development.
So instead of getting caught up in the why of these preferences,
Right.
it's about shifting our focus to the how.
The how.
How can we build confidence
Yeah.
and create fulfilling relationships regardless of height?
Right. And it seems like one of the key strategies that kept coming up in the sources
Yeah.
was expanding our social circles
Okay.
and connecting with people who share our values.
That's a powerful one.
It is.
It's about surrounding yourself with people
Right.
who appreciate you for who you are,
Exactly.
not for how tall you are.
Not for how tall you are. And it goes back to what Dr. Fisher said
Right.
about challenging those digital echo chambers.
Yeah.
You know, that we can sometimes find ourselves in
Right.
by stepping outside of our comfort zones.
Yeah.
And engaging with a wider range of people.
Yeah.
We open ourselves up to more authentic connections.
Oh, right.
And expand our perspectives on attraction.
It's like we're breaking free from those pre-programmed algorithms.
Yes.
And saying, hey, there's a whole world of amazing people out there.
Exactly.
And I'm not going to let a few inches dictate my potential.
Your potential for happiness?
For happiness and connection.
And connection, exactly. And it's not just about finding romantic partners either.
Right.
It's about building strong friendships.
Yeah.
Finding mentors,
Right, yeah.
connecting with people who inspire and support us.
Oh,
because ultimately, those are the relationships that truly enrich our lives and help us grow as individuals.
So on a personal level, it's about shifting our mindset
Yes.
from insecurity to self-acceptance.
Right.
And from limitation to expansion.
Expansion, that's good.
But what about on a societal level?
Okay.
How can we create a culture that values diversity
Yeah.
and embraces a wider range of beauty standards?
That's where the work of organizations like Love Beyond Labels becomes so important. They're actively challenging those narrow definitions of attractiveness that are often portrayed in media and advertising.
Yeah.
And they're promoting a more inclusive and accepting view of beauty.
I love that it's about showing people that beauty comes in all shapes and sizes.
Yes.
And that true attraction goes far beyond superficial traits.
Exactly. And it's not just about representation either. It's about fostering open conversations about these often sensitive topics.
Right.
It's about challenging those ingrained biases.
Yeah.
Both our own and those we see around us.
Yeah.
And it's about celebrating the unique qualities that each individual brings to the table, regardless of their height or any other physical attribute.
Because when we focus on those inner qualities, on the things that truly make a person special, height becomes just one small detail in a much bigger picture.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought. Imagine a world where we celebrate the diversity of human experience, where we value inner qualities over outer appearances, and where we all feel empowered to embrace our authentic selves.
What a beautiful vision. And while there's still work to be done, I truly believe that we're moving in that direction.
Me too.
The more we understand these complex dynamics, the more we can challenge outdated norms.
For sure.
And create a world where everyone feels seen, valued, and loved for who they truly are.
Well said, and thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.